I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Conor Fahey. Conor currently works in Group Internal Audit in ESB. He completed his training contract with PwC in Ireland and the US, working with a mix of financial services and industry clients. And before joining ESBI, he worked with Master Foods and Rocha Stores in Dublin. So in 2005, Conor joined ESBI, where he spent 6 years in various financial controller roles, and he's currently working, as I said, with ESB Group as internal auditor. So without further ado, I'll hand you to Conor.
So my name is Conor Fahey, as Tracy said. I work for the ESB. This came across my desk from my dad recently, and I thought you might enjoy it. I had the dubious, myself and my wife and my 2 sons moved house recently, and I had the dubious pleasure of assembling 2 IKEA wardrobes. So I followed the instructions to the letter of the law, and the first one turned out perfectly. And I did it for the second one. It took half the time. And I think interviews are a bit like that. Once you practice and you prepare, and you know your subject matter, it'll go very well. If you don't do that, it'll kind of end up like a wonky wardrobe. So anyway, I'll just give you a little background about myself. You've heard all of this, BCom. This is the gravy train. I'm sure you've all been through there. BCom, MAC, PwC, Master Foods, Rocha Stores, and I've been in ESB for the last 6.5 years. Ed asked me to give you a rundown on the electricity business, and it's funny when you're so immersed in a business like this, it's very hard to simplify it. But I've tried to do my best, and it's really, you know, if you go for an interview with any of either the ESB or Electricity or let's say Board Gosh or Viridian or any of them, they'll all be involved in these type of activities. What they do is they invest, well, we invest in wind thermal generation plants, their plants that basically produce electricity. We also invest in the network, the transmission and distribution network, which is all the infrastructure that takes the electricity from the generating plant to your home and business. That's a regulated business. And we also invest in future and new technologies. So these are technologies that will yield profits for us at some stage 5 to 10 years down the line, when the profits from a traditional business that we're carrying out at the moment will run out. And you can see those wave electric cars, smart networks, meters. If anybody wants to know exactly what they are later on, you can come and ask me. Obviously, what we need to do then is we need to operate and maintain those assets. We operate and maintain our own generation assets, but we just maintain the networks. The network, as I said, is just the power lines, etc., that you see on the street, and all the kind of transformers and switching gear, etc., that you see elsewhere. We trade gas and electricity. So the reason we do that is because electricity is sold on a half-hour basis into a pool. So generators sell into the pool, buyers or suppliers buy from the pool, and then they sell on to you. So we need to balance our demand on one side on that half-hourly basis with our production on the other side. So that's why we trade. So basically what happens is everybody sells into a pool and it's billed back out again. And if what you sell into the pool isn't bought, you've lost. So that's the way it works, and that's why we trade electricity and gas. We do that in both the UK and the Republic. Finally, then we obviously need to make money out of it. So we sell the gas and the electricity to your mums and dads, the houses that you rent, the businesses that Paul and company run, and we also obviously charge suppliers and generators for the use of the system, the network system that carries the electricity around the country. And that's it in a nutshell. I don't know if anybody actually had that, but these are the locations that ESB operates in. I joined the international arm, which broadly speaking is represented by the red dots, and the Republic of Ireland is basically ESB's home market. So why did I choose ESB? So I suppose a lot of the guys have been very honest. Did I have a career path? I guess I kind of did. Like I did always want to work in business in some shape or form or another. When I was 5, I didn't think to myself, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, but when I did a BCom, I did it with a certain amount of purpose. When I became a chartered accountant, I did that purely as a stepping stone. It wasn't that I wanted to work in practice or I wanted to crunch numbers all my life. My interest is in business, put it that way. So when I decided to choose ESB, it was probably as a result of a couple of things that had happened along the way. My first job out of practice was with Master Foods. They're an American multinational. They basically produce Mars bars and Snickers and pet food and stuff like that. And I found that that business was controlled by, you know, an entity in North America that I had no influence on. So when I'd say about 6 months into that job in Master Foods, I decided I don't want to work for an American multinational. As well run as it was just not my thing. I just felt I wasn't having an influencing role. So I decided then I'd join an Irish company, so I joined Roche Stores. Unfortunately, that was sold about a year after I joined it. So I found myself out in the street, and I did a lot of interviews, and I suppose I had a couple of options available. I had an oil and gas company, and I had another FMCG company. And I'd done the FMCG thing, so I thought, okay, it's either oil and gas or it's ESBI. So I took an awful lot of advice from contacts, and I'd say that if you're looking at a job, it's very important that you work the network that you know. So speak to all the people you know who could in some way have a connection with that company, and try and garner as much insider information from them as possible. For instance, I spoke to two guys who, one was an FC inside, and the other guy was the CFO of Green Property and previously worked in ESBI. I spoke to both of them on the phone. They were introductions that I got from other people who I knew when I mentioned I was either interviewing for ESBI or I had a job offer from them. And the type of things that they talked about were actually very positive. They ticked an awful lot of boxes between what I wanted for my career and what I wanted, and what ESB could give me. Now, obviously, when ESB decided to offer me the job, they felt I had something to offer as well. But in terms of opportunities and development, there seemed to be a stream of people that came out of ESBI Finance that went on to do very good things. The current CFO of AIB is ex-ESBI Finance. As I said, Data ex-CFO is ex-ESBI Finance. The CFO of the NTMA, the CEO of the NTMA, Eddie O'Connor is ex-ESB. You know, there was a whole trivia of people who walked out of ESB into very good jobs because of what they'd done in ESB. I also liked for me, the management plans and the focus wasn't necessarily something that I could necessarily grasp, but in terms of the people mix, as in the number of different disciplines working in the business, that was another big thing for me as well, because it meant that I'd get exposure to different disciplines who could teach me something about that business. And that again for me was key, because I'd spent virtually kind of 6 or 8 years working on financial statements and financial control jobs and preparing monthly accounts and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of felt I needed to get away from that. So the people mix was a big factor for me. On top of that then, the product and the market and the industry. A lot of people don't maybe appreciate that electricity is a very unique product. It's the type of thing, it must be produced on demand. So the minute you flick your light switch, there's something is making that happen for you. So it's not as though you can store it. The market in Ireland, this was 2005, the electricity market in Ireland was a regulated business. There was really only one player, and coming down the line in 2006 and 2007 there was a project to create the single electricity market, which was basically where electricity would be traded. So the price of electricity would be determined on a half-hour basis. So that signalled to me that there was a huge challenge ahead for both ESBI and for ESB to cover that gap off. The industry then was going to go through a huge state of flux. Like the green agenda was coming in, wind farms were coming in, and all those new technologies hadn't kicked off yet. But yet they were talking about them in the interview when I interviewed with them. So that to me kind of said that these guys are kind of ahead of the curve, so they obviously know what they're talking about. And what they talked about was interesting. It engaged me. And the PLC thing, funny, Donald talked about the interest rates, you know, Ulster Bank and the interest rate, not passing on the interest rate cuts to their customers. I mean, working in ESB is interesting in that everybody's always giving out about the price of electricity, so you're always, in some way, you're topical, so that was good too. My experience to date in ESBI, I started as an FC of a facility management business. That was basically a business that operated power stations. They were power stations based in Spain, the UK, Pakistan, Malaysia. It was a very small team. There was basically 8 of us based in Dublin, and there was about 20% travel to these locations. That was good too. You were welcomed with open arms because the local expats there just loved to see you coming, because you were, I suppose you were a way of getting a message back to corporate about what they felt needed to be done locally and what kind of support they needed. It was, yeah, and plus it was an introduction to the electricity business in different regions. So, you know, market structures were different, contractual structures were different, cultures were different. All of those things meant that apart from just your straightforward accounting role, you were learning so much else besides. My next job then was as FC of ESBI's generation and trading business. At the time, it was just a generation business. Then when the single market came in, it morphed into a trading business as well. Again, extremely interesting. This time it was the asset ownership, so you're driving out the return on the investment in the first place. It was the ESB was not allowed to grow in its home market because, for obvious reasons, because they were trying to encourage competition. So independent generation was the I suppose the end game for ESB in terms of growth. So all the investment that happened ended up at our door. So the business changed. Like, it started off with I think there was 7 people in the office in Dublin, and it grew to 35 in the space of 3 years. The number of megawatts under management tripled. The number of companies went from, like, do you remember the first time I did a consolidation was in IG, and there was 8 companies, and by the time I finished we were consolidating 35. So that was a kind of a make or break experience for me. And then I kind of thought to myself, well, here I am in ESBI, and I went in here to be, you know, I talked about the influencing thing and being in a position to be able to influence the direction of the company. But I was in ESBI, and yet I felt everything was being dictated to ESBI by ESB. So I decided that I needed to get some face time with the senior management and the directors in ESB, because they were the guys calling the shots. Plus I needed to understand that the scale and appreciate the challenges and the priorities that ESB as a group faced. So my former boss in the previous job there had worked in internal audit, and he said, you know what, you'd be perfect for internal audit. And I went, no way, no way, I'm not going there. But I wasn't really given a choice. So I took it up, and I have to say, anybody who's looking to get behind or beneath the bonnet of a big business for the first time, I couldn't talk it up enough, seriously. Maybe internal audit in ESB is slightly different in that we have local control governance functions to do all the kind of testing and all the, you know, all the kind of routine work that you do in external audit, whereas this group here tends to be more risk and business advisory focused. I probably didn't appreciate that at the time, but now I do. I don't know what an internal audit is like in CRH or Kerry Group, but I would think if you want to join an internal audit function, come and talk to me, and if I can let you know what ESBs is like and what you should look for in terms of trying to match it up with what I find good about it. But that's my riposte there to to Donald. Advice, I'm not going to kind of what the guys have said is the same type of thing. The only thing I would add on this is seek advice like I did. I think pick a sector that's interesting to you. The benefit of that is that you'll be engaged every day in work, and you'll be engaged with all the people who don't work in finance in work, and it will open your mind to what they do, why it's important, and maybe the potential roles you could move into that are non-finance. And, you know, like Paul said, your career builder, the number of number of strings to your bow, bows to your string, is important, and that's, you know, picking a sector that you enjoy or that engages you is good from that, is important from that perspective. I'd also say that when it comes to your career, try and do a job that you're going to enjoy. There's very little joy out there at the moment. This is the one thing you can control, and if you enjoy it, it'll be something that you look forward to every day, and you'll be really good at it, and that's key. Finally, I think an interview is a two-way process. It's a bit like a marriage. If the two parties who come together and the fit is good, it's all rosy and everybody's happy, and everybody benefits from it. If it's not right, everybody gets hurt. And that's just kind of my reflection on the interview thing. It's like you guys are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, you know. I think that's important not to forget that, especially in this environment. Finally, yeah, all of those things have been. To my mind, the CV that stands out is one that says achievements, not just the role you did, but what you achieved in it. I think, yeah, engage, listen effectively, speak efficiently. So answer the question that's asked. If you're not sure what the question is, don't say I don't understand. Say something like, do you mean this or do you mean that? And you'll find that maybe the answer will come back to you anyway. Competencies, yeah, prepare for it's like the IKEA wardrobe. Prepare, know your subject matter, and it'll be fine. As I said, be open and honest, and ask questions. If you have any doubts, having done your kind of research and your reference checking as such, ask the question in the interview. Because if you don't, you'll walk away from the interview and you won't know, you'll still have doubts about what it is you were hoping to garner in the first place, or you'll walk into the marriage and you won't be entirely sure that it's right for you. So that's it.
Thanks very much, Conor.